Welcome to the studio at Africa's Green Economy Summit. Today we are joined here by Hendrik Malan, who is the CEO of Frost & Sullivan Africa. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
So today you weighed in on a session that was focused specifically on identifying the green economy opportunities in Africa. In your view, which possible opportunities don't get enough recognition and why?
I think there are two main sort of areas I think that we need to really focus on, especially from an infrastructure perspective, which is one of my areas of expertise or focus, which is water. I think number one. Everything requires water. Whether it be manufacturing or energy generation or infrastructure or urbanization, which obviously is quite a big trend within the African environment. Given our population growth, water is absolutely an essential element, and water infrastructure investment at the moment is extremely low. So there's a lot of talk about water. How water is an essential ingredient to every aspect of our way of living and our economies, etc. But when we take a look at the actual investment in water infrastructure and the sustainability of some of those investments, I think they're particularly low. I think there's definitely an area that we should be focusing on, in a much more significant way. And then the second one is transportation. Transportation in most economies are typically the number two polluter. So energy being number one, transportation being number two. And there's a lot of focus on being green from an energy perspective. But Africa's industrialization probably not be driven through renewables only. We most likely have to take a hybrid approach between your renewable energy sources and then some form of baseload power as well, which will most likely be gas in our environment. We have the opportunity, though, to offset some of those emissions through our transportation approach, the strategy that we follow, to essentially enable our workforces and our population to be mobile. We don't have the problem associated with developed economies where we have these large, very carbon-heavy systems that we've got to deal with. We can design these systems from scratch in order to be significantly carbon less heavy, and then essentially offset some of the problems that we have on the energy side. So I think those two are two of the industries I think that we should definitely receive more attention.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you touched on decarbonization, because a lot of sectors now with the race to net zero are rushing to decarbonize as quickly as possible. So which sector do you believe is one to look out for?
Well, I think currently in Africa, again, if we follow the capital, energy is definitely in the forefront. There's a lot of investment going into green technologies and hydrogen in particular. We take a look at the amount of hydrogen projects that have been announced and currently going through viability assessments. Egypt leading the pack, countries like South Africa and even Mauritania, up north, investing in a lot of opportunities and potential projects. Looking at green hydrogen storage of energy, obviously. And then one of the industries which is quite surprising that's now coming through the ranks is agriculture, commercial agriculture in particular. Africa does not have a lot of commercial agriculture outside of South Africa, to speak of, but a lot of initiatives within the agricultural environment, producing green fertilizer, through to carbon reduction in terms of meat production. There are a lot of green initiatives within the agriculture and agro-processing space, I think, that we can watch out for.
And Frost & Sullivan also releases a lot of actionable insights into the green economy for the development of Africa's economy. So what recent trends in the green economy have you noticed that have caught your attention?
Well, I think the move in particular towards electric vehicles is obviously a global trend, which I think Africa can very much take advantage of. Africa does have an automotive industry. We manufacture a lot of cars to be exported to the rest of the world. But I think with the global automotive industry moving very strongly and very quickly to electric vehicles, Africa has the potential to start producing batteries for the automotive industry. Now, we sit with the minerals and the metals required to produce batteries, whether it be nickel or cobalt or manganese. There are a lot of these metals and minerals that are located within South Africa, which we currently export in raw format. We export it to countries like China, which refines and they produce the batteries and then ship it back along the south coast of Africa back into Europe, which from a logistics perspective just doesn't make sense. We can add 30, 40 times the amount of value just by moving a couple of steps up in the value chain, by focusing on battery production. And we don't even have to produce the full batteries. It's just playing an increasingly bigger role within the value chain of battery production. So tapping into and knowing our place within that value chain and knowing the strength that we have in our natural resources.
And taking a step back from looking into the future of what Africa can do, what positive actions have you seen taken by African officials that you think can accelerate the role to the green economy right now?
I think there are a lot of catalytic projects that governments are driving at the moment. I've mentioned the hydrogen industry in South Africa. You've got the hydrogen valley that they're trying to push. There's a fair amount of legislation that we've seen dotted around the continent as well. I think what we very much like to see, I think, going forward is really your government stepping in order to reduce the risk of a lot of, especially our infrastructure projects. When we speak to large capital, big capital, systematic capital wanting to come into Africa, they typically raise one or two concerns. One is the availability of bankable projects on the one side, and then on the other, they're looking at the governance structures not being suitable or not being appropriate or strong enough within Africa to be able to absorb systematic level of capital, not at scale and at speed in any case. Now, on the former, I think governments can do a lot on reducing the risk of particular projects, whether it be infrastructure or other types of investment. And that's not necessarily sort of your direct involvement in capital and providing forms of insurances, but there are a lot of other contextual elements that can reduce the risk of these projects in order to improve the dynamics of risk and return. And then on the governance frameworks, that pretty much solely sort of is government's focus, or should be government's focus, in order to be able to increase the robustness of our governance frameworks across the region in order to be able to absorb that level of capital. There is a fair amount of capital available globally at the moment, especially given sort of the global dynamics and economic slowdowns in some of the developed markets. They're looking for a home for that capital, and I think we can provide that.
Thank you so much for sharing those valuable insights with us. I hope some investors are watching.
I'm hoping so as well.
And for all of our viewers who are watching, make sure to share your thoughts with us in the comment section down below, and make sure to like and subscribe to see more content like this. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.